This conference will now be recorded.
Really excited to be joined today by Al Anderson, and we're going to be talking about a number of different things, but covering audit, technology, methodology, and just innovation more generally. So, Al, I know most people in the US will recognize you instantly, and your name will carry a lot for people in the United States of America. And probably internationally as well. But for those who maybe haven't come across you before, would you mind giving us a brief introduction of yourself and your background?
Sure, Mark. It's indeed a pleasure to spend some time with you today. Yeah, I'm Al Anderson. I'm the president of a company called Accountability Plus, and we focus heavily on process improvement and audit methodology improvement for firms across the United States. My background started with having been at RSM, or Gladry when I was there, and director of audit, and I actually worked with the global firm of RSM to create the paperless audit methodology for the global RSM firm. Then I had an opportunity to spend 9 years at the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants as senior vice president, overseeing all of the technical areas, auditing, accounting, the CPA exam, and in a group called the Assurance Service Executive Committee. And that Assurance Service Executive Committee also worked internationally with other accounting organizations across the country. And I started a concept called the International Innovation Network at the time, where the accountancy bodies across the country work together to avoid duplication of effort, so that there was a sort of a common stream of innovation ideas coming out that was uniform across all institutes. So I've had a broad and diverse career, but the thing that kind of drives me is I do like change, and I do want to drive change in the auditing and accounting profession, and that's why I focus on it so much at Accountability Plus.
Well, that's fantastic, Alan. And to hear from the get-go that you like change must put you in a smaller corner of the profession that we work in, straight out of the gate. But I've seen you speak, and I've heard your passion and enthusiasm for really working with firms and trying to drive innovation and change within them. You must be working with a broad range of firms right now. But what are some of the common areas that the firms that you're working with at Accountability Plus are looking at and trying to make change happen?
Well, the most of the firms we work with, and we work with firms of all sizes and shapes, but most of the firms are really not prepared for auditing in the future. And they basically do most of their audits in a very traditional fashion, which I call top down. They're balance sheet focused, and they start with the balance sheets and drill in. Well, the future with technology, integration of all of that, and artificial intelligence is built off of the data, not the balance. And so we spend a lot of time getting firms ready to be data-oriented auditors as opposed to balance-oriented auditors. And that's a major culture shift for a lot of firms. But once they start seeing the power of data, it's amazing to see the excitement in the managers and the senior accountants that say, wow, I didn't realize how much I could learn about this client if I understood this data better as I do now.
So that traditional balance sheet, if we audit this year's balance sheet and we audited last year's balance sheet, then the profit and loss account is basically the gap between the two. That's still quite prevalent, is it then, Al, from your experience with a number of firms?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the sad thing, and it is truly sad, is that I've been in this profession a long time, and the audit that I started doing 25 plus years ago is fundamentally the same as the audit that the staff are doing today. They say they use technology, but honestly, what they really do is replicate the paper world. I ask every firm or every one of you that are listening to this to just reflect for a moment and think about the structure of your paperless or electronic work papers and on your technology, and ask yourself, did we just build this and basically digitize our paper world? Does it replicate exactly, almost exactly what you were doing in the past? And 99.9% of the time, the answer to that is yes. And we have to turn this ship to really get things moving much more in a data orientation, because that will allow us to, without question, take greater advantage of the technology and the tools and techniques that are out there, because the tools and techniques see the power of data and they're building systems and solutions around that data. And it's really up to the auditor to jump on it and take advantage of it.
And I think that really resonates with me, because I think one of the things that's been coming up with a lot of firms I've been speaking with recently around some of the barriers to really innovating and really pushing forward their audit approach has really come in two areas. One has been the methodology that they're ultimately using to drive the audit process. It's designed for more of a checklist-based mindset, a kind of a traditional audit approach, and therefore it can be quite challenging to try and work out where a new and innovative technique actually fits into that process. And it runs the risk that that new and innovative technique just becomes an additional thing you do. It's not really replacing anything. And the second piece has been in the audit platforms themselves. And a lot of firms have been using the term with me, that the filing cabinet. They see that the audit platform is simply a technology place to put what used to be a paper-based approach into a paperless approach. Is this change that's going on right now in the audit profession and the use of data and the use of technology, is this a lot more, in your view, than the move from paper to paperless? There's something far bigger at play here.
You know, I mean, the real thing is most firms are using the technology as a repository, not a tool to enable a much more effective and efficient audit. And we have to migrate away from thinking of it as a repository, as the technology has got to be the ultimate enabler. And firms are slow to adopt these concepts in a lot of reasons, for lots of reasons. One is, when I work with firms, they say, Al, we love all your ideas and we'll get on it just as soon as we have time. All right. Well, and then 12 months later, I'll say, how'd you do? And they go, well, we ran out of time. Yeah. And we never got to it. And when I, it's kind of interesting, I always ask people what the goal of the audit is. And the goal of the audit, when you talk to staff, is oftentimes to get it through review. And when you talk to a partner, the goal of the audit is to get it through peer review. And I say, what about protection of the public interest? What about the insights that you gain from this client that you can share with your client? And we've so totally lost sight of insight and really the concept of protecting the public interest to some extent. And a lot of that is driven off of the checklist. I oftentimes will ask staff accountants, what was the net income on your last audit? And they don't know that number. Mm-hmm. And one person actually said, one time said, well, where is that on the checklist? It says I'm supposed to know that. And I'm going, come on. And so what we need to do with these firms is create an opportunity for them to do what I call a whiteboard, clean slate, plain paper, whatever it is, and start without a checklist and build the audit to accomplish the objectives and flush the balance orientation and dive into the data. And that makes a huge difference when they starting from scratch, because you're right. Most firms add technology and tools and they say, well, I didn't gain anything because I didn't stop doing anything. So my number one rule of thumb is what are you going to stop doing when you start using these technologies, these tools and techniques? And that's very important. And unfortunately, the firms are kind of stuck in their own paradigm. They really don't know what they don't know, and oftentimes they struggle mightily to figure out what it is they can stop doing. And that's where we come into Accountability Plus, and that's where the technology providers can come and help people think that through, to problem solve it, to kind of say, okay, well, this is what it can replace, this is what it does. And that's a real key is these tools and techniques and fresh thinking can result in significant efficiency, greater value, greater knowledge, and your staff are much more excited about their daily job.
Yeah, I think that's something that is underestimated in a lot of the discussion around technology, Al. And I think that from my perspective, I see so many of the graduates who join our business or the graduates who are joining a CPA firm. And these individuals are incredibly tech savvy. They're using applications on their phone day in, day out, which I'll openly admit I don't understand the point of some of those things in terms of what they're doing. I still haven't, in my world, understood the need for Snapchat in my life or any of these other really kind of new and more innovative tools. But we take these individuals who are incredibly tech savvy, who are incredibly digital orientated. And it feels to me that all too often we're putting them into a very analog world where we're asking those individuals to do the audit process or do a tax engagement perhaps in the same way that the partners and senior staffers did when they joined the profession. And it feels to me like we run the risk of the profession becoming less attractive to those individuals, to them staying, them not staying in this profession and gravitating towards other more exciting professions in their views. What can we be doing now to try and remediate or make the profession more attractive to these individuals?
Well, I think we have to do it one step at a time. I think I'm a big believer in that we basically, corporations and businesses, oftentimes, especially larger entities, have research and development type departments and divisions. Well, we work with firms to do what I call R&D audits, where we take a team, we basically go with a blank sheet of paper, and we R&D it. And it's not done in a think tank and hypothetical, it's on a real live client. And so the givens are, you comply with standards, you issue an appropriate opinion, but all the steps that you take in between are open for debate and discussion. And what is amazing, when I've worked with firms that have done R&D audits, I've had senior accountants come up to me and said, if our firm hadn't done this, I was going to leave, because I always use this example that, back when I was growing up, we used to say that, 3 years of experience in public accounting is compared to multiple years of experience in industry. Well, when I think about today, auditors that have 5 years of experience, you have to question as to really how much they've grown in that 5 years of really knowledge base. Because I oftentimes say they might have 5 years with the firm, but they just have 1 year of experience repeated 5 times because they've done the same thing. And when I was explaining that to a managing partner of a large firm a couple years back, he goes, oh my gosh, that's why the best and the brightest are leaving, and the ones that are comfortable filling out checklists and doing ticking and tying until they're blue in the face stay with the firm. And the power is we got to keep the best and the brightest. The best and the brightest and the ones that are always trying to innovate are not going to rest and stay with a firm that is unwilling to change. And the challenge